and when exactly did the White House encourage her to testify?
Well, the letter that her attorney sent literally says that if we do not receive a response by March 27th at 10 a.m., I will conclude that the White House does not assert executive privilege over the matters with respect to hearings or otherwise. I don't think you can be any clearer than I'm literally, that's what she wrote. The action was, if you don't act, then we will assume the following. Great. I don't think that you can read that any other way. It was I'm sure, a very talented, he is a very talented lawyer and wrote it specifically for it. We read it that way and chose to not act because we have no problem with her testifying, plain and simple.
So executive privilege is not an issue for Sally Yates, would have not have been an issue for Sally Yates testifying.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And following up, one issue, you want to add?
No, it's interesting. I mean, this is very clearly worded, and yet somehow you're asking me how to interpret that in any other way than literally reading plain English.
Okay. Interpret something else for me. Does the president still believe that climate change is a hoax?
In January, the president did an interview deriding the little toy walls on the southern border. That's a quote. And said, I don't know why they're even wasting their time. Why is the government focused so much on existing border security measures rather than fighting for the wall that he promised that he would build?
Thank you for an opportunity to show you some things. So if I can get the first image up. You asked.
Did you guys avoid?
No. But you literally.
Just one question about
Sure.
the photos. Are those photos of fences or walls?
That is called a bollard wall. That is called a levee wall.
So that's the wall that
No. No. There are various types of walls that can be built. Under the legislation that was just passed, it allows us to do that. As we've mentioned, that is called a levee wall on the left. That is called a bollard wall. Huh?
So that's not a wall, it's a levee wall?
That's what it's actually called. That's the name of it. It is called for.
You're building fencing, not walls.
In this current bill, it allows us to do the following. So to be clear, in several areas along our southern border, we have what was in the first slide, which are areas in which someone can literally cut through with a pair of wire cutters or put a little barrier over that a car can drive over the top. Okay, what we've done is taken the tools that we have to replace, and if you look at that one in particular, you've got a chain link fence is what is currently at our southern border. That is literally down there now. We are able to go in there and instead of having a chain link fence, replace it with that bollard wall. That's what it is.
But it's not the wall. So you're basically just telling supporters, the president's supporters, to be satisfied with this existing tough guy fencing until he's ready to build the wall.
Hallie.
Thank you, John. Two topics for you. And one, just bear with me. I get some clarity on something that my colleagues have tried to follow up on as well. You've said that the president stands by his tweets Saturday morning. The President Obama ordered this wiretap. You've also said that the administration wants Congress, and let me just be clear, he said he found out this information. You've also said that the president wants Congress to investigate. Some members of Congress, by the way, have asked the White House and asked the president to come forward with that information. So bottom line, why would the president want Congress to investigate for information he already has?
I think there's a separation of powers aspect here, as I mentioned to Jonathan, that we think it's.
It's not about resources and time. Why waste that?
Well, it's not a question of waste it. It's a question of appropriateness.
But if the president has the info, and I guess that's what I'm trying to get to. If he's sitting on this information that he found out, he's now directing or asking or recommending that the intelligence committees look into this. And you talked about they have resources and staff, which they do.
Right.
But why expend those resources and staff if the president found out this information and hasn't?
I think there's a difference between directing the Department of Justice, which may be involved in an ongoing investigation, and asking Congress as a separate body to look into something and add credibility to the look adds an element that wouldn't necessarily be there if we were directing the Department of Justice, for example. But again, I think we've made it very clear how he wants this done and where we go from there. So,
Second question.
Questions.
Yeah.
I want to go back to that draft executive order that would undo some of the restrictions for handling detainees. Has the president seen that draft EO?
I'm sorry, the one that he's
Has
signing?
he seen it? No, the draft executive order that would undo the restrictions on how to handle detainees.
I guess I'm having a hard time You're asking me if a document that's not a White House document he's seen. I don't believe, to the best of my knowledge, and so I would ask. There's this is the second day in a row we're getting asked about documents that are floating around, and people saying, and frankly, reports being published attributing documents to the White House that are not White House documents.
And I haven't attributed.
No,
to
no,
the
I'm
White
not
House
saying you-
to
I'm-
be fair.
I-
just
I-
has he- do you know if he's seen it?
To the best of my knowledge, he hasn't seen it. I think he's got a lot of other
Since
things.
it is floating
Hold
around,
on,
I have a couple more
Sean.
questions.
You
Since
get
it
one
is-
more. Let's
since
not
it is-
agree.
I have two more. Since it is floating around.
Okay.
Is he considering
Kristen,
bringing
don't-
back
this is a-
black sites and
I'm not going to start
waterboarding?
answering hypotheticals about documents that are floating around. That's a you're basically.
considering
Okay,
those
Kristen, we're going to end this right now.
Okay.
Hunter, no, Hunter Walker.
Thank you,
Thank
Sean.
you. Hunter,
The
thank you.
president is reportedly going to limit access.
Long stretches of time go by and we get full reports from the pooler saying, we've been asking the White House for information about what the president is doing.
I understand that, and-
And we don't get that information.
I-
We can't even get an answer to whether he's golfing or not.
I
I'm
understand that
serious.
some days that you don't get it as quick as you want.
Some
But,
days we never get
okay,
it.
but with all due respect, Julie, he's entitled to have moments with his family and private time. So I think respectfully, I would disagree. I think we do a very good job of getting you information, of bringing you along to events, whether he's here or at a location or even going out to dinner. We've lived up to that. I think the president and is entitled to have some times with his family and friends to just catch up.
But then that's the difference than what you're saying.
No,
Abby,
but-
which is that you are providing.
No,
that
but what
information.
I'm saying is her question was about official business. And when he does have a call and when he does meet with advisors, we generally put it out. But when he's meeting internally, in the same way that when he's meeting here with his staff, we don't read out every staff meeting that's going on. And so when he's down traveling and he's having meetings, whether it's on Air Force One or wherever, that's what his staff does, is they provide him updates and policy briefings and give him an opportunity to make key decisions with their insight into a particular issue. That's what all presidents do. And I'm not going to define the word, Glenn. Yeah.
You got the 13
Hold
to
on,
14 million
Hold
number.
on.
on a different
Hallie's
topic.
on number
Follow,
two.
13,
Hal-
14 million
hey,
number. Where did you get that number?
Glenn, is Hallie's, can you please not interrupt her? I'm sure it's.
Do you want to take that now?
No. I think I'm not going to allow you to be interrupted. At the end of how can it be accurate reporting, Glenn?
In terms of policy, follow up,
Shannon,
Sean. What does that mean in
Shannon,
terms of
Glenn,
policy?
this isn't a TV
What is
program.
the
We're gonna,
justice follow-up? What
Shannon,
is the
okay,
justice
you don't get to
department
just
gonna
yell
do?
out questions. We're gonna raise our hand like big boys and girls because it's not your job to just yell out questions. Shannon, please go.
Okay.
Glenn.
Sean, you've referenced polls a couple of times from the podium, but a poll came out today, CBS says the president has a 40% approval rating. We've seen the approval rating drop during the transition period. He talked about polls a great deal during the campaign. A, what do you think that says about the way the American people are looking at these actions that he's taking? And B, what do you think it says about his pledge to unite the country on the eve of his election?
I think there's also a Rasmussen poll that showed he had a 51% approval rating. Thanks. I'll let Kristen talk.
Confident that the House and Senate Intelligence Committees would ultimately vindicate the president's allegation that Trump Tower was wiretapped. As I'm sure you have now seen, the Senate Intelligence Committee has said they see no indications Trump Tower was the subject of surveillance. That seems to be a pretty blanket statement. What's your reaction?
Well, I think there's several things. I would also, it's interesting to me that, just as a point of interest, that when one entity says one thing that claims one thing, you guys cover it ad nauseum. When Devin Nunes came out and said, I think it's very possible, yesterday, there was crickets from you guys. When Devin Nunes came out and said there was no connection that he saw to Russia, crickets. When Tom Cotton said the same, you don't want to cover the stuff. No, hold on.
No evidence
No,
of wiretapping
actually-
at Trump
actually,
Tower.
this-
So now you've had the House Intelligence Committee and the Senate Intelligence
No,
Committee.
actually, here's his
saying
quote,
they don't
Jonathan.
see-
No, here's the direct quote. I think it's very possible, end quote. That's what he said when he said the president's communications could have been swept up in collection. So again,
He said there was
no,
I saw no indication of wiretapping.
I understand that,
No
and I
evidence
think
of
and I think the
wiretapping.
president's been very clear when he talked about this, and he talked about it last night. When we talked about wiretapping, he meant surveillance, and that there have been incidents that have occurred. Devin Nunes couldn't have stated it more beautifully, but you choose not to cover that part. You chose not to cover when Tom Cotton went out, when Richard Burr went out, when others, Chairman Nunes and others, and said that there was no.
Senate
Hold on.
Intelligence Committee
No,
saying
I,
point blank
no,
they
I
see no
understand that, Jonathan.
indications
And
of
where was your
surveillance.
passion and where was your concern when they all said that there was no connection to Russia? Where was it then? You crickets from you guys, because at the end of the day,
saying the
when
president stands by the
hold on,
allegation that
hold on,
President Obama wiretapped the Trump Tower?
I'm making a point. The point is this: number one, that it's interesting how when evidence comes out and people who have been briefed on the Russia connection come out and say that there was nothing that they have seen that proves a connection, you choose not to cover that. You don't stop the narrative. You continue to perpetuate a false narrative. When he came out yesterday and said, quote, "I see no evidence that this happened," when he said, quote, "I think it's very possible, but like I said, we should know later," you don't cover that part. You only cover the part that this is. But let's go through what we do know. Okay.
Saying that the president still stands by his allegation that President Obama ordered wiretapping or surveillance of Trump Tower, despite the fact that the Senate Intelligence Committee says they see no
That's- but-
indication that it happened. Does the
You're-
president still stand
no,
by the
first of all,
allegation?
he stands by it, but again, you're mischaracterizing what happened today.
No,
The
they
Senate,
said
no,
they
no,
saw
I
no
know,
indication.
no,
I'm
no,
reading exactly from their statement.
I understand that, and at the same time, they acknowledge that they have not been in contact with the Department of Justice. So, but again, I go back to what I said at the beginning. It's interesting.
briefed
Hold
by
on,
the FBI
hold on.
director.
It's
They've
interesting
been-
how, at the same time, where were you coming to the defense of that same Intelligence Committee and those members when they said there was no connection to Russia? You didn't seem to report it then. There was no. So you want, hold on, you want to comment and you want to perpetuate a false narrative.
Actually, I did
when
report that Clapper said that. I
but
actually
when
did.
those individuals have gone out time and time again, when Chairman Nunes has said, number one, that there was no information that he's
try to revamp its image. 2.5 months in, you've got this Yates story today. You've got other things going on. You've got Russia. You've got wiretapping. You've got
No, we don't have that. I know.
investigations on Capitol Hill.
No, I get it, but you keep. I've said it from the day that I got here until whatever that there is no connection. You've got Russia. If the president puts Russian salad dressing on his salad tonight, somehow that's a Russian connection. But every single person. No, that's. I appreciate your agenda here, but the reality is, no, hold on. No, at some point, report the facts. The facts are that every single person who has been briefed on this subject has come away with the same conclusion: Republican, Democrat. So I'm sorry that disgusts you. You're shaking your head. I appreciate it, but okay, but understand this: that at some point the facts are what they are, and every single person who has been briefed on this situation, with respect to the situation with Russia, Republican, Democrat, Obama appointee, career, have all come to the same conclusion. At some point, April, you're going to have to take no for an answer with respect to whether or not there was collusion.
How do you change the perception of
We're going to keep doing everything we're doing to make sure that what the president told the American people he was going to do, to fulfill those pledges and promises that he made, to bring back jobs, to grow the economy, to keep our nation safe. That's what he's been focused on since day one. We're going to keep focusing on that every single day.
comes Friday. Condi Rice did not support this president. She did not go to the convention. She comes. What is on the agenda, and how is their relationship? Has it healed since 2006 when he used a very negative word to
So
describe?
here's what I'll tell you. It's interesting that you ask those two questions back to back. On the one hand, you're saying, what are we doing to improve our image? And then here he is once again meeting somebody that hasn't been a big supporter of his. Hold on. But April, hold on. You, it seems like you're hell-bent on trying to make sure that whatever image you want to tell about this White House stays, because at the end of the day, let me answer. Okay, but you know what? You're asking me a question, and I'm going to answer it, which is the president. I'm sorry. Please stop shaking your head again. But at some point, the reality is that this president continues to reach out to individuals who've supported him, who didn't support him, Republicans, Democrats, to try to bring the country together and move forward on an agenda that's going to help every American. That's it, plain and simple.
President Putin has supplied personnel, he supplied military equipment to the Assad government. What makes you think that at this point he's going to pull back in his support for President Assad and for the Syrian government right now?
I think a couple things. You look, we didn't use chemical weapons in World War II. You had someone as despicable as Hitler, who didn't even sink to using chemical weapons. So you have to, if you're Russia, ask yourself: is this a country that you and a regime that you want to align yourself with? You have previously signed on to international agreements, rightfully acknowledging that the use of chemical weapons should be out of bounds by every country. To not stand up to not only Assad, but your own word should be troubling. Russia put their name on the line. So it's not a question of how long that alliance has lasted, but at what point do they recognize that they are now getting on the wrong side of history in a really bad way really quickly? And again, look at the countries that are standing with them. Iran, Syria, North Korea. This is not a team you want to be on. And I think that Russia has to recognize that while they may have had an alliance for them, that the lines that have been crossed are ones that no country should ever want to see another country cross. Yeah.
Two seasonally related.
Cecilia.
Thanks. I just want to give you the opportunity to clarify something you said that seems to be
Thank
gaining
you.
some traction right now. Quote, Hitler didn't even sink to the level of using chemical weapons. What did you mean by that?
I think when you come to sarin gas, he was not using the gas on his own people the same way that Assad is doing. I mean, there was clearly, I understand your point. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. There was not he brought him into to the Holocaust Center. I understand that. But I'm saying in the way that Assad used them, where he went into towns, dropped them down to innocent into the middle of towns, it was brought to it. So the use of it, and I appreciate the clarification there. That was not the intent.
Okay.
Good evening. Thank you guys for coming. I know our first official press briefing is going to be on Monday, but I wanted to give you a few updates on the president's activities. But before I get to the news of the day, I think I'd like to discuss a little bit of the coverage of the past 24 hours. Yesterday, at a time when our nation and the world was watching the peaceful transition of power, and as the president said, the transition and the balance of power from Washington to the citizens of the United States, some members of the media were engaged in deliberately false reporting. For all the talk about the proper use of Twitter, two instances yesterday stand out. One was a particularly egregious example in which a reporter falsely tweeted out that the bust of Martin Luther King Jr. had been removed from the Oval Office. After it was pointed out that this was just plain wrong, the reporter casually reported and tweeted out and tried to claim that a Secret Service agent must have just been standing in front of it. This was irresponsible and reckless. Secondly, photographs of the inaugural proceedings were intentionally framed in a way, in one particular tweet, to minimize the enormous support that had gathered on the National Mall. This was the first time in our nation's history that floor coverings have been used to protect the grass in the mall. That had the effect of highlighting any areas where people were not standing, while in years past, the grass eliminated this visual. This was also the first time that fencing and magnetometers went as far back on the wall, preventing hundreds of thousands of people from being able to access the mall as quickly as they had in inaugurations past. Inaccurate numbers involving crowd size were also tweeted. No one had numbers because the National Park Service, which controls the National Mall, does not put any out. By the way, this applies to any attempts to try to count the number of protesters today in the same fashion. We do know a few things, so let's go through the facts. We know that from the platform where the president was sworn into 4th Street holds about 250,000 people. From 4th Street to the media tent is about another 220,000. And from the media tent to the Washington Monument, another 250,000 people. All of this space was full when the president took the oath of office. We know that 420,000 people used the D.C. Metro public transit yesterday, which actually compares to 317,000 that used it for President Obama's last inaugural. This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period, both in person and around the globe. Even the New York Times printed a photograph showing that a misrepresentation of the crowd in the original tweet in their paper, which showed the full extent of the support, depth, and crowd and intensity that existed. These attempts to lessen the enthusiasm of the inauguration are shameful and wrong. The president was also at the Central, as you know, the president was at the Central Intelligence Agency today and greeted by a raucous overflow crowd of some 400 plus CIA employees. There were over 1,000 requests to attend, prompting the president to note that he'll have to come back to greet the rest. The employees were ecstatic that he's the new commander-in-chief, and he delivered them a powerful and important message. He told them he has their back, And they were grateful for that. They gave him a 5-minute standing ovation at the end in a display of their patriotism and their enthusiasm for his presidency. I'd also note that it's a shame that the CIA didn't have a CIA director to be with him today when he visited, because the Democrats have chosen, Senate Democrats are stalling the nomination of Mike Pompeo and playing politics with national security. That's what you guys should be writing and covering. That this, instead of sowing division about tweets and false narratives, the president is committed to unifying our country, and that was the focus of his inaugural address. This kind of dishonesty in the media, the challenging that bringing about our nation together is making it more difficult. There's been a lot of talk in the media about the responsibility to hold Donald Trump accountable. And I'm here to tell you that it goes two ways. We're going to hold the president